Omar and other members of the squad. It comes after she posted that controversial tweet comparing the United States and Israel and Afghanistan to terrorist groups Hamas and the Taliban. Omar has since responded saying she didn't mean to draw that parallel, and she's quickly built a reputation for being an unabashed flamethrower on Capitol Hill. But two words from Marjorie Taylor Greene have also caught some people off guard. Our own Logan Raddick joins us now from Capitol Hill with that story. Logan?
Well, John, a strong but simple statement from Marjorie Taylor Greene, the congresswoman from Georgia, after visiting one of the most powerful memorials in Washington.
I have made a mistake, and it's really bothered me for a couple of weeks now, and so I definitely want to own it. The Holocaust there's nothing comparable to it.
Greene delivering a powerful message at the Capitol after what she calls a moving experience visiting the U.S. Holocaust Memorial.
Seeing Jewish Americans be attacked in our city streets, and we've seen it on video, we've seen the reports, and these are things that should never happen to any American for their religion or identity.
Greene says members of the so-called squad of House Democrats under fire for their anti-Semitic remarks could be inspiring these attacks. And three of Greene's Republican colleagues, Michael Waltz, Jim Banks, and Claudia Tenney, introduced a censure resolution Monday condemning Congresswomen Ilhan Omar, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Rashida Tlaib, and Ayanna Pressley for defending, quote, foreign terrorist organizations and inciting anti-Semitic attacks across the U.S. Omar posted her comments, which are drawing fire, which she posed to Secretary of State Tony Blinken during a recent House hearing, saying, quote, we have seen unthinkable atrocities committed by the U.S., Hamas, Israel, Afghanistan, and the Taliban. And while House Speaker Nancy Pelosi says party leadership's moving on, Democrat Congressman Josh Gottheimer says Omar isn't expressing any remorse.
That false equivalency is, it's unacceptable, to say the least. It undermines our national security. And it leads to more anti-Semitism. So I think she should probably be calling all of us.
And Republican leader Kevin McCarthy is considering introducing a resolution to remove Ilhan Omar from the House Foreign Affairs Committee, but that's looking less likely today. This morning, he said that if the Republicans were in the majority, then they would remove people who, quote, have anti-Semitic and anti-American views from their committee assignments. Now, in the Senate, they passed a resolution via a voice vote condemning anti-Semitism, 74 co-sponsors, and it was drafted by Jackie Rosen, a Democrat, and James Lankford, a Republican. John.
Logan, thank you for that.
I think that the Democrats would have benefited from listening to the concerns that I expressed about U.S. trade policy, where we were losing our basic industries here as a result of trade agreements like NAFTA and GATT and China trade. The book, by the way, points out that when I was elected mayor of the city of Cleveland, I defeated the Democratic machine and the Republican Party. I was elected as an independent. And so I think that more and more Americans are looking for the results of policy, whether it comes from a Democrat or a Republican. People are looking for results that will make sure they have good paying jobs, decent benefits, good neighborhoods. I mean, these are all things that are part of the practical aspirations that people have, regardless of what party's in power.
Those are the things that, helped you win the mayorship of Cleveland a long time ago. And I think you're right. I think a lot of people are hungry for actual, real results. Meanwhile, we get the complete opposite from most of the people in Washington. But let's talk about your book, The Division of Light and Power. It takes a very critical look at private utility companies in Texas and Ohio and California and Illinois and elsewhere. And you say they're crushing consumers with price gouging and sky-high rates. You also accuse them of criminal behavior. Now, we talked in the past to Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton, who is suing that electricity retailer Griddy. Is this one of the companies you take aim at in your book?
No, I focus on the story of myself as America's youngest mayor. And as someone who took a stand to save our little municipal utility from a takeover by a giant utility monopoly. And I make a case, and I document it, John, of corporate espionage, sabotage, of blackouts were created by the private power company on the city system, putting many people at risk. And then I take them into, just take the reader by the hand and say, look at this system. Look at how it's been corrupted. Look at how it's working against people. Look at why you're paying utility rates that are too high. And look at how public officials are not standing up for the people. This book is, I think, going to make a difference in opening up people's eyes to actually what goes on inside of government, who's making the decisions. And it's written not ideologically, it's written so that a Republican, a conservative, a Democrat, a liberal can look at that and say, Kucinich is, really has given me information that I needed to understand government a little bit better.
Well, I think there's important lessons in there on home rule and the importance of having control over your local municipalities and those running your local municipalities. Also interesting, too, to see what's happening with utilities. You've got the Attorney General of Ohio saying that social media companies should be regulated like that. Also, Clarence Thomas, the Supreme Court Justice, saying the same thing. So interesting to look at utilities in general. I look forward to reading the book in its entirety. I haven't had a chance to finish it yet. But thank you for your time, Mr. Kucinich. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Bye now.
Denis Kucinich. Great new book out, I think worth taking a look at for everyone. All right, still ahead this hour, former President Trump continues to gain widespread support, even in some blue states. Not everyone is happy about that, though, plus the senator apologizing for using what some consider an outdated term. A lot of folks just say it's hurtful. We'll talk about that now. Trump's birthday, and Newsmax's James Klug hit the streets of California, which is opening today, to get some birthday wishes and see what else people had to say about the president's birthday. It's great to see so many people supporting President Trump, and also a reminder that not everyone feels the same way about our former president.
What's going on, everyone? James Klug here. Today is President Donald Trump's birthday, and we're going to ask people in Huntington Beach if they have a message for him. Today is Donald Trump's birthday. Do you have a message for him?
Happy birthday, and I hope I see him back.
Do you have a message for him?
Yeah, I wish him a great birthday. I hope he's doing well. I hope with all this public hate going on, it's not getting to him, and he's out there killing it on the golf course.
Happy birthday, Trump, and I hope he comes back in 2024.
Happy birthday, Mr. Trump, and go out and shoot the low 70s today.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday. We love the guy. He's awesome. Yep. Hawaii loves him. He hugs the flag. That's what I love about him.
Today's Donald Trump's birthday. Do you guys have a message for him?
Love you, Donald Trump.
Oh my gosh, our favorite news show. Hey!
It's Donald Trump's birthday today. Do you have a message for him?
Happy birthday.
Happy
We miss
birthday.
you.
We miss you.
Oh my gosh, happy birthday, Donald. Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Hope you're doing well.
I'm not going to wish you a happy birthday because I think you're a jerk, and I think you should be in jail for all the laws that you broke.
What laws specifically?
Of course you would ask me that.
For the details?
For the details, I'm sorry, I don't have any details. Sorry.
Makes sense.
No, as James said after that, of course not. She didn't have any details. Meanwhile, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer is now apologizing. The Democrat used the word retarded. During a recent appearance on a podcast, Schumer was talking about his own experiences with pushback from his community when he was trying to pass housing initiatives for mentally and developmentally challenged children. Take a listen.
And when I first was assemblyman, they wanted to build a congregate living place for retarded children.
There you go. That was the use of the word usage there from Schumer. But what's going to happen to him? Nothing, really. He's apologized. His office issuing a statement. We'll talk more about that. But no one seems to care about Hunter Biden's use of the N-word either. You can call it liberal privilege if you like. But let's talk about this with our panel and welcome in Robin Byro, a retired Army Ranger, Jessie Jane Duff, former co-chair of Veterans for Trump and Women for Trump as well. She's a retired Marine Gunnery Sergeant. And Morgan Zagers is here. She's the founder of Young Americans Against Socialism. Great to have you all with us.
Great to be here.
Good afternoon.
All right, so here's the apology, Jesse, from Schumer's office. Quote, for decades, Senator Schumer has been an ardent champion for enlightened policy and full funding of services for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. That comes from his spokesperson, Angelo Ruffaro. Quote, he is sincerely sorry for his use of outdated and harmful language. So when Democrats use this kind of language, Jesse, it's outdated. It's not insensitive or no one's calling for his cancellation. It's just outdated language.
Well, what I would say is that I have to appreciate that he did come forward so quickly with an apology, where yet we have to hear from Ilhan Omar and Rashid Tlaib and AOC for many of the insensitive remarks that they've made about Israel and some of the horrible comments that they have made. And then let's move on to Hunter Biden and the N-word, which is the most reprehensible word. It never was in fashion. It was never appropriate to use that word. It's a pejorative. It's derogatory. The Democrats are not held accountable for this. So Chuck Schumer coming forward with an apology is one thing. However, I just think the party as a whole gets a complete pass, and we won't see much on the left criticizing him for using that word, because he does know better. He seriously does.
We're pretty tight on time here, guys. We'll have more time to talk about this stuff in the next hour. But just real quickly to you on this, Robin. My issue is not with Chuck Schumer. Clearly, he misspoke, a poor choice of word that happens to the best of us. But my issue always here is with the double standard. And, you know, again, with the Hunter Biden stuff, of course, the Schumer thing's going to dissipate quickly. But Hunter Biden's not held accountable to the same degree that a lot of Republicans are, especially when Hunter put this stuff in writing in text messages multiple times.
Because Hunter Biden he holds no elected office, which I'm grateful for, because he's a liability and a walking disaster. Let's be real here. But Chuck Schumer, he does hold elected office and a very important role. So this is embarrassing. And I, too, don't like the double standard, John. I am grateful that he came forward so soon. But it reminds me of Thanksgiving dinner with my crusty old uncle who says similar things. And you're just going, geez, you know better.
Yeah, Chuck Schumer, the crusty old uncle. We've heard that one before. But Morgan, you know, I just want to go back to something that Robin said about Hunter Biden. Yes, he doesn't hold an elective office, but his father, you know, is the president of the United States, and Hunter still sits on the board of one of those Chinese companies. You know, so you have concerns about the conflict of interest here. But, you know, again, this goes on the media, the people that are supposed to be fair about this stuff, Morgan, and they're not.
Absolutely. And just to touch on Senator Schumer's remarks, I think we are living in a graceless society where we can't accept the fact that some people do deserve to be forgiven. And the greater issue here is that hypocrisy. We aren't calling for Senator Schumer's cancellation on the right. Instead, we just want a fair and even playing field in this. And when we see Hunter Biden using the N-word, and we know that students have, like the 15-year-old student who said it and was recorded by a fellow classmate, and then he sent it to her college, she can't go to that college anymore, and she made national media headlines for what she said, and she used it in the same term. Same thing with Morgan Wallen, the country singer. He was, you know, canceled for using the N-word in a joking way, the same way that Hunter Biden did. And so we just want an even playing field, and this is really disappointing, but not shocking, of course.
Yeah, and you know, again, you know, Chuck Schumer does have a pretty decent record when it comes to standing up for these developmentally challenged kids, and we see the error of his ways here, and again, we give him credit for apologizing, but the double standard from some is unacceptable. Morgan, Jesse, again, sorry about the short time here, but we will have more time to chat. Coming up in the next hour, all three of our panelists are coming back to talk about Jeffrey Toobin's return to CNN and the way it's been handled by the cable news network. All news stories to take you behind the headlines, including some stories you may have missed. Hey, Alex.
Hey, John, thank you. Well, Hong Kong is watching a Chinese nuclear plant after a leak was reported. Now, nuclear experts say the gas might be leaking from fuel rods inside the reactor in Taishan. But China's government says that's no abnormal radiation was detected outside the nuclear power plant following the reports of the leak. Now, according to the Hong Kong Observatory, radiation levels were normal in Hong Kong. Social media, taking to Instagram and Twitter with an essay titled "Hi Again," saying it's been a very humbling few weeks. Now, after being called out for awful decade-old messages that resurfaced harassing media personality Courtney Stodden. But here's the thing. Just as this apology dropped, so did a brand new claim from fashion designer Michael Costello, claiming Chrissy Teigen bullied him to the brink of suicide. Now, the Project Runway alum shared screenshots of his alleged exchange with Teigen via direct messages 7 years ago, where she allegedly told him, quote, "Racist people like you deserve to suffer and die. You might as well be dead. Your career is over. Just watch." And Roger Waters, a founding member of the rock band Pink Floyd, turned down a huge amount of money from Mark Zuckerberg. Now, the Facebook CEO asked Waters if he could use Pink Floyd's song Another Brick in the Wall, Part 2, in an Instagram ad. Well, Waters was quick to shut down that request, saying, F you, no effing way, adding that Zuckerberg is one of the most powerful idiots.
Mince words when it comes to his music, not willing to sell out to Zuckerberg and his spears. Great to see you, Alex. All right, coming up, is President Trump eyeing a position as Speaker of the House? What does Don Jr. have to say about that? We asked him. We have another clip from our interview with Don Jr. coming up.
That's a real plan.
Well, that was Donald Trump Jr. talking with us here yesterday. That response coming after our question about a possible run for Speaker of the House by his father. Several media reports said the former president thought the idea was, quote, very interesting. But as you just heard there from Don Jr., that's not the real plan. What is the real plan? Well, President Trump's Save America PAC and him endorsing America First GOP primary candidates in 2022. In the meantime, those who do want his endorsement are being warned, don't fake it or else. Those folks probably won't have to worry, or these folks probably won't have to worry about getting the endorsement. They all voted to impeach the former president and for the 1-6 commission. You can see them on the screen here. 9 of these 10 Republicans who did vote for impeachment are also facing primary challengers already. Now, election integrity is also something we are watching very closely. Let's check in now on what's happening in Arizona. The state attorney general there, Mark Brnovich, is warning the DOJ to stay out of the current audit of the 2020 election returns. The AZAG wrote a letter accusing U.S. Attorney General Merrick Garland of having, quote, an alarming disdain for state sovereignty. A Republican-led hand continue to try and slam Republicans who are leading this voter integrity effort. Laws in Texas and Florida and Georgia do eliminate some of the COVID-loosened voting restrictions. They also add voter ID requirements. And Georgia's former gubernatorial candidate, Stacey Abrams, is now claiming that these new voter laws and these audits are a threat to democracy. She compared them to the Capitol riot. Take a listen.
They are designed to subvert democracy. And the challenge is, to the extent we have secretaries of state who support and suborn this behavior, they are hastening the demise of our democracy. And this is not hyperbole. This is exactly what happens across the world.
It actually is hyperbole. And of course, Stacey Abrams still claims that she won, or didn't lose, I should say, the 2018 governor's race in Georgia. She lost. Let's bring in now congressional candidate for Washington's 3rd District, Joe Kent. Great to see you again, Joe. All right, so Stacey Abrams says this is not hyperbole, but it really is, because, you know, you look at some of these election laws, you look at the voter integrity effort. She specifically was talking about Mark Brnovich there. This is stuff that voters really care about. They want to feel confident when they go to the polls, and until this stuff happens, they're not going to feel confident, are they?
No, they're not. And I don't understand why elected officials or people who claim to support our democracy and want to have a greater stake in being part of our government are not supporting these types of audits, because we have to have full faith and confidence in our system. That's the very foundation of our republic. The social contract we have with our government is that we get to pick our leaders. So any leader that's not taking this process seriously and really respecting what is going on right now in Maricopa County, in Arizona, what's hopefully going to happen in Georgia, Wisconsin, Michigan, any places where there was widespread discrepancies, for it not to be adjudicated is an absolute insult to all the American people. And then also, it's a very dangerous thing for elected officials to not take seriously. So I think Stacey Abrams comparing this to the January 6th narrative and putting this as part of the January 6th narrative, it just shows how desperate they are, that they must actually have something to hide. And they're very scared of what's going on with this adjudication. That's why we just have to keep pushing back against the mainstream media. And I really appreciate you all covering the recount down there in Arizona. So
thank everyone at home, because I mean, this is not something we're doing. We think it's important, of course, but our audience is interested in this, and they want to know that their vote counts, and that's why it's important to us, because it's important to them. You know, Liz Cheney is ripping the Arizona audits. Here's what she tweeted: "What's happening in Maricopa County is not an audit; it's an effort to subvert democracy." That sounds exactly like what Stacey Abrams just said.
It's just really disappointing, but par for the course for these establishment Republicans to just fall right in line with what the far left is pushing. I mean, Liz Cheney obviously is very politically motivated. She's backing the woman that I'm trying to primary, Jamie Herrera Butler. Jamie Herrera Butler has also gone along with the January 6th narrative. She voted for the impeachment of President Trump. She volunteered to be a Democrat star witness. So this whole narrative that this last election was fair and free and that we just have to move on, it's part of a greater effort to just get rid of the populist movement that President Trump was a part of, because that movement actually got real results for the American people. It challenged the status.
As well as vaccine diplomacy. Although Kamala Harris not near the border, she's supposed to be in charge of it. President Biden, for his part, is headed to Geneva, Switzerland, where he will meet with Russian President Vladimir Putin tomorrow. Biden was asked about that meeting during a news conference yesterday in Brussels during that NATO summit. One reporter brought up Biden's previous comments where he called Putin a killer. And here was the president's response.
He has made clear that the answer is, I believe he has in the past essentially acknowledged that he was, there are certain things that he would do or did do.
That was not a glitch. That was a real pause there. Now, the long pause wasn't a delay again. Biden showed up 3 hours late as well for that news conference. Meanwhile, during an interview with NBC News, Vladimir Putin said that he was not surprised by Biden's accusations. He also touted Russia's new relationship with China.
We do not believe that China is a threat to us. That's one. China is a friendly nation. It has not declared us an enemy, as the United States has done.
All right, joining us now for more on the upcoming meeting between the Russian president and the American president is Newsmax White House correspondent Emerald Robinson. Hey, Emerald.
Hi, John. Well, clearly at this meeting, all eyes are on how the two leaders interact. Particularly, attention will be paid to President Biden's demeanor towards the Russian president. However, as you said, he really struggled yesterday during that press conference to answer the question about if he still thought Putin is a killer. However, he had a much more definitive answer to that question when asked the very same question back in March.
You know Vladimir Putin, you think he's a killer?
Mm-hmm. I do.
So much more readily able to say that he thought Putin is a killer during that interview with George Stephanopoulos back in March of 2021. And in fact, President Biden's language towards the Russian president has softened significantly, almost like those Nord Stream 2 pipeline sanctions ahead of this summit.
I have met with him. He's bright, he's tough, and I have found that he is as they say when he used to play ball, a worthy adversary.
That was also from the NATO summit press conference from yesterday. So Biden being very complimentary of the Russian president, something that President Trump was often criticized for and called soft on Russia policy for any kind of compliments he paid Vladimir Putin. Now, in talking about that, it's interesting. We're getting a look, and we'll talk more about that in the next hour, about how that day is going to be structured with this bilateral meeting. I'll tell you, there's not a lot of press availability. Also, they will be doing solo press conferences, and the concern, talking to people behind the scenes, the concern has been that if they do a joint press conference or they have joint press availabilities, that either Biden will be tough on Vladimir Putin and cause him to be much tougher on President Biden, or that he will be soft and then be criticized for being soft. So they're just going to try to avoid it, John.
Yeah, Emerald, two completely different media strategies. Vladimir Putin welcoming in the American media, kind of ducking into the wave, if you will. Joe Biden sticking with what's worked for him, quite frankly, on the campaign trail and through the presidency so far. Very limited exposure to the media. Emerald Robinson, we'll see you at the 1 o'clock hour as well. Let's also welcome in Gordon Chang and our good friend Tony Schaefer, retired lieutenant colonel from the U.S. Army. Tony, Gordon, great to see you both here. I was struck mostly by Vladimir Putin's soundbite with NBC News. Gordon, this one's first to you. The relationship with China and Russia historically has been complicated, to say the least, but in this situation, Vladimir Putin certainly understands that he's able to leverage this tension for his own benefit, isn't he?
Well, he certainly is. And by the way, John, today we have seen both large-scale military exercises by both the Chinese and the Russians off the coast of East Asia. And that one day before the meeting with President Biden, I think is not a coincidence. China and Russia are working very closely together. They've been coordinating their militaries. They've been coordinating their diplomacy. So although, yes, they do have real problems, although they may never form an enduring partnership, that doesn't really matter. Because in the here and now, we see both of them working together, and Putin is obviously using this to get some leverage off of Biden. And I think that explains Biden's inability to call Putin a killer, something he's done in the past.
Yeah, well, earlier this week, Tony, President Biden kind of likened himself to FDR with Churchill before the World War II. But what I think we really see here more is a relationship of Stalin and FDR. Although FDR in this situation is Xi Jinping, he seems to have this relationship. The only thing that really unites China and Russia is their willingness, or their desire, I should say, to see the United States hamstrung and become a lesser power.
Absolutely. And I agree with both you and Gordon on this. Let me be very clear. The Putin move actually, I think, is much more emblematic of the Nixon playing the China card during the early 70s at the beginning of our real push to defeat the Soviet Union. It's kind of, strategic mirroring of that back on us. So anyway you cut it, Putin is a strong man. And John, I'll just say it. Look, Putin has, according to the people I speak to, with who has direct knowledge, Putin's murdered people. He's murdered reporters in elevators in Moscow. With that said, he is the leader of Russia. He is a strong man, and he's going to play the hard game. And I believe that the China piece does indeed strengthen his hand against us because, as you know, the United States has been very antagonistic to Putin. It's been very antagonistic to China. So this actually plays into Putin's hands at this point, and Biden's going to go into a very tough situation to negotiate.
And Tony, I mean, he's tried to kill people too, including Alexei Navalny, who sits in a prison right now for the crime of, not wanting to return to Russia to be, to have attempted murder committed on him again. We don't think this has not come up at all during the G7. We don't expect President Biden to mention this. One of the things that they are talking about, Gordon, is his prisoner swap. Paul Whelan, a former security official, was arrested on charges of espionage. This is a political prosecution. You also see U.S. Marine Trevor Reed here, who was arrested in Moscow for a 2019 drunken brawl here. This, I guess, would be a measure of success. We certainly want to see these Americans come home. But what do you think, Gordon, could be a clear takeaway, a victory that is attainable for the Biden administration from this meeting?
It's really hard to see that because we've got problems across the board, and I don't think Putin is going to be accommodating on anything. Just before this meeting, the Biden administration waived the sanctions on the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. That's something that Russia really wanted. I'm not sure that we got anything in return for that, at least from Russia. We might have gotten something from Germany. I don't know. But the point here is that Biden has made an important unilateral concession. So I don't really think that Putin is in any mood to give anything back to Biden. I mean, why should he? Biden's already given him the candy store.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point that Gordon brings up there, Tony. Normally, you'd expect this type of prisoner exchange to occur in correlation with the easing of the sanction on Nord Stream 2. But this is part and parcel what we see from the Biden administration, giving away the candy shop before the Iran nuclear deal, giving away the, all the goods before the Paris Climate Accords. They want to be friends with all these adversaries before they actually get anything in return.
And they will get nothing in return, as Gordon said. Look, every time this has been tried in history, if you look back at the 1930s and the Nazi Party and Hitler, if you look at the 90s, where we had North Korea pushing the envelope under the Clinton administration, always getting more, never getting less, and the same under Obama with the Iranians. The history of appeasement is painfully clear. And the moment you appease, you expect that aggressor to be more bold. And nothing can be anticipated except for Putin to be more aggressive in this meeting with Biden. I predict catastrophic failure.
Weakness is in of itself provocative many times here. Let's go back to this Wuhan lab leak. I hesitate to even call it a theory anymore because